As part of my challenge to interview a player, a coach, or anyone in the world of football from every single country, the 26th is now here. From Norway, Tor Thodesen joins me today. How are you doing?
Thanks. I'm good.
As we said, today we're going to be talking about your whole career, spanning quite a big chapter of your life, everything from football, from the age of 7 in grassroots football over in Norway. What was that like? What was the experience like first kicking a football?
Well, when you look back, I recently turned 58, so it's some years ago. But when you look back, it feels like it was the only thing, or at least the most important thing I was doing, and we were a group of friends, five boys, same age, living in the same neighborhood. And the father of two of those five were actually twins, and they are my friends today as well. And their father had been involved in football at some level, and took all the five boys to football training. In my family, there were no football players prior to me, but I went with my neighbor's father, and he took us everywhere, and he let us also play. We played a lot in the streets, or in just a lot that was vacated, and we had some goalposts, and unorganized football, but also at the same time when he took us to the local club, and we started club football.
In the 1970s, you mentioned that you were growing up playing unorganised football. Was this common in Norway to see maybe not so much facilities for the youth coming through?
No, we had facilities. We had clubs and we had organized trainings, but the challenge with that was that you could go only maybe twice a week, or tops 3 times a week when you were under the age of 10. And we wanted to play all the time. So my feeling is that we played a lot more unorganized than we played organized.
Would that help you going into it? Because later down the line, we'll talk about you stopping football at the age of 24. To go through all these years playing football unorganized, to get better touches on the ball, training more, would that have helped later down the line? Obviously, had you only trained twice a week?
Well, for sure. And I think it's a common... I've seen Johan Cruyff even saying the same in some interview, that where you learn football is with your friends in the streets. Yeah, I actually discussed it with the fellow Norwegian the other day. What happened to the organized football, to the unorganized football, and we started by saying, okay, there are not so many parks or vacant spaces anymore. That's one thing. That some of these, just you had some sticks for goalposts. Those lots are gone, but we ended up concluding that that's not really the issue, because they have made some this modern I don't know what it's called in English, but in some neighborhoods they've built this artificial with fence around, just for like playing five-a-side. And it's open, public, and anyone can go there. There's no organized training there. So there are still possible to play unorganized, but I'm thinking that society has changed. Kids are kept at home, or they stay at home in front of the computer, or they take part in too much organized activity, and maybe the parents put even more emphasis, at least in Norway, on doing your homework. I didn't do my homework, but they couldn't stop me. I would say I'd done them, but I hadn't, because I needed to get out and get dirty. That's how it was, but it was different.
It's really interesting that you mentioned computer games and just staying inside, more organised things. And everyone that I speak to, when we go into these details about growing up, they always mention that the youth of today, the people that are growing up in Norway today or England or wherever they may be, are attached to video games. They're attached to things that are distractions from going pro. And the advancements of people wanting to become a professional footballer is higher than ever. In Norway, is this the same? Loads of kids wanting to be a footballer, but you know that they won't make it purely because of an electronic device?
Well, At one in one way to see it is that if you have the talent and you have the will, you have a good chance of. I'm not saying you're a good chance of achieving to become a professional, but at least to chase that dream. But maybe we are getting more lazy, and maybe the parents are telling them that you can become whatever you want. Just relax and enjoy, and if that's the attitude, you will not you will not make it in football. It's the toughest it's the biggest sport in the world, and there are thousands in each country, born each year, that compete. So it's really tough. And of course you've seen the same in England when you do the statistics, and you see how many from the best academies actually go through and become professionals, and it's silly numbers. There is it's not 1 in 100.
It's a real shame that is the case. 1% of academy players make it to the professional game. And we have to compare that with what could have been. And I always say countries like Asia, Africa, South America, who don't get as much recognition for footballing talent inside their own country for various different reasons. I said, if you take the best players that never got the chance to play football in a stadium, I'm sure you'll get very far in competitions like the Championship, Premier League, purely because the talent isn't recognised. But in Norway, there seems to be quite a variety of talent. Haaland, Odegaard in recent years. Is the scouting network over there good enough to see these players shine through?
Yeah, well, it's changed a lot over the years. I've been working in professional football in 30 years, and it's, even the last 15 of those 30 years, maybe the biggest chance is in the second part of that period, because now we are looking a lot to England especially, but all over to Europe. We even looked at ourselves as a skiing country up until recently, and the rest of Europe has told us that, and I've experienced that when I go abroad as a coach. Ski country. It's like you don't get all that recognition as a professional football coach when you come from Norway. You have to prove that you actually know what you're talking about. But I'm thinking this has changed a lot, or at least the way we look at ourselves, because the Norwegians, they don't speak anymore about being born with skis on your feet. That's a saying in Norway, And of course the winter is still the winter, but now we have all these indoor facilities, artificial turf with roof, So we've seen with Holland, with Odegaard, that it's possible. So we have changed a lot, and now we've become we're producing players on a factory line now. But back to your question, I here in my neighborhood in Dakar. The cars just when I drive into the apartment building where I live, I have to stop several times, and I have to maneuver through the two rocks that the kids have as goal. They play in the street, and they don't even take notice when a car is arriving. So I'm thinking, if we make all this a factory line, we're going to miss out on something. I'm convinced about that, and I don't think all coaching is good coaching when it comes to kids. I don't like it when I see well-educated, well-meaning grown-ups talking too much. When you should let them play. There is a balance somewhere. Use players like it's on a factory.
You mentioned the facilities over in Norway. What are they like? Because I've spoken to people, coaches from Finland and Sweden, people that have been in those two countries playing at high levels. And they said the standard of football is decent, but the facilities aren't too great. In Norway, what would you say the facilities are like?
Well, I would say they are still not great, but all the professional top clubs now have access to a full-size indoor pitch. So they go to, we have a long preseason because of the climate, of course. The league normally starts in the end of March, and it ends in mid-November. So we have a long preseason, but the clubs now, they go 2 or even 3 times to camps in Spain, in Turkey, in Cyprus, and then they come home. They play indoors in full size indoor pitches, and so for the professional clubs, the facilities are good enough. There is no question. But of course, for grassroots and the amateurs, it's still. I watched my son yesterday play fifth division. They actually had their first official game of the season, and it's fifth division. But it was streamed on internet, so I was sitting here in Dakar and watching it, and I think it was like -2 degrees and raining. And he was playing in short sleeves and shorts, and I'm thinking that's not very smart.
Well, it's not very smart, but they're used to it over there. You were a goalkeeper, I believe, when you were going in. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You were goalkeepers, yes. So when you were at grassroots level, there must have been something in your head thinking, professional footballer, I would like to be the next Ronaldo, the next Messi, right? You would want it to be that?
Yeah, I wanted to be the Maradona for sure. Well, I was the kind of kid that if you say go and fetch me this, I'll measure the time. Then I would sprint. I was stupid and very easy to influence. So they put me in goal for one game. I guess the goalkeeper didn't show up, and I was not afraid of anything. I was like diving into the feet of older players, bigger players, and I got a lot of praise. And when you're that kind of kid that feeds off that praise, I wanted to do it again, and I actually developed to become a very talented goalkeeper at the early ages, and even through my teenage years. But and I was thinking like. Where can I play that they will see me, so I can possibly get a call up for the under 17 or the under 18, that age. But it never materialized, and at the same time I stopped growing at 174 centimeter, 1 meter 74, which is of course not big. There were some goalkeepers in my age or my generation on top level. Bento of Portugal, I think he was 172 centimeter. But it's not an excuse, but it was a limitation for me when it came to goalkeeping, for sure. So and again, being a grassroots club, there were no player development officer who could like step in and say, I see you're left-footed, you should develop as a left winger, not a goalkeeper. Maybe that could have been prevented.
Well, up until the age of 18, you were playing in grassroots. So it is really a breeding ground for such amazing talent like yourself, like other people. But the problem is there's loads of grassroots all over the world. As we said, England, Norway. I'm sure every country in Europe will probably have a grassroots place for people to go play football on a weekly basis. But that does have some limitations to it. If you were in an academy in Norway, what do you think could have taken you to what heights?
Well, that's impossible to say. I like to think that I could have had a shot at it as an outfield player as well. Okay. But at the same time, when I grew up, I was doing cross-country running and cross-country skiing. And I was very talented in skiing, so I could, like, for my region and eventually also on the national level, I could compete, I could win races. Which of course also did something with you when you're young. When you see that it's possible to win, you want to win every time you compete. And when I brought that mentality into football as a goalkeeper, it didn't serve me very well. I was not good at losing, and eventually it became in a way a problem. And at that time, I was probably not an easy player for any coach at the age of 17, 18, 19 years old.
Why do you think that would have been? Because you know how good you could have been? Is that what the problem for you was?
No, well, we are all could have beens. I have a lot of friends, and we bully each other. Yeah. Remember, you hurt your knee. If that hadn't happened, you would surely have succeeded. We have to to recognize that even when I grew up, the needle, to make it is the chance to make it is not big. So it feels like a little bit stupid to talk about it. I got, like you already mentioned, got the opportunity to move into professional football as a coach at a very young age, and that was it for me. Immediately when I saw that I had that possibility, I wasn't in doubt. I just went for it immediately.
And then all of a sudden you became an assistant and then a head coach. I mean, the difference between the two, relatively similar, I would say. But what would you prefer to be, an assistant coach or the head coach?
Now, the thing I did right was that when I was, I think I must have been 24 at the moment. I was just finished the University of Sports in Oslo. A guy giving lectures in football, also working in the federation, knew that I was into goalkeeping. We had to make some exams and deliver papers and so on, and some of those subjects I focused on goalkeeper coaching. And so there was a guy who was connected, who knew that I was really interested, but he didn't know if I could operate on a professional level, but he knew that at least I was really keen on it. And I'd started coaching younger goalkeepers and so on in Oslo at the time when I was at the university. So then this top club name is Lyn. They are now in the third. No, they actually just promoted to the second level again. But at that time they were a top league club. They needed a goalkeeper coach, and they told me, okay, you can have a trial as a coach. We will soon find out if we can offer you a contract. And I went there, and I think I did one smart thing, because at that time they had a goalkeeper ranked number 3, 4 in Norway, probably number 1 of the ones who were still in Norway. At that time we had Tor Thodesen in Tottenham, we had Grodås in Chelsea, we had a good, and a little bit later, Thomas Myhre in Sunderland and Everton. We had a good generation of goalkeepers, but this goalkeeper was probably one of the best who was still in the Norwegian league. And he was 30 years, meaning 6 years older than me, and a really headstrong guy, but a really tough guy. He knew exactly what he wanted. And I went straight to him and said, I'm here to service you. I want to learn. I want to get to know you. I have a really good left foot. I can place the ball where you want. I'm a student, so I can come. We can go in the morning. We can go in the afternoon. We can do extra. So I just more or less offered myself to him as a serviceman. And I didn't know him at the time when I did it, but it turned out it was the right way to treat that guy, because he was really headstrong, really experienced, and a really hard worker. So he just wanted somebody who could be available. And so we formed a good relationship, and after working together for some months, for a year, a second year, a third year, you can start. I could start also putting pressure on him and coaching him. But in the beginning, I was just a serviceman, and that's led to another offer to become a goalkeeper coach in another top league team. So I was goalkeeper coach for, I think, nine years in the start of my career.
So you then moved away from Lyn. You moved to Vålerenga, I believe.
Vålerenga, yes.
Yes, and then what was that like then? It was a transition as a goalie coach again. You're moving away from what you were used to at this club. You've got settled down with this new goalie or someone that was new to you, and then you've left. Why was the decision to leave correct for you?
At that time, Vålerenga was better and gave me a good offer. Just finished my studies. Well, to be honest, living off my girlfriend at the moment at that time, because when I got that chance, I just prioritized it. And the first contract wasn't even it was pro and daytime training. A goalkeeper coach could not make a living of that salary. You could, as a student, barely covered my housing in Oslo, but that was it, but I was young and had the possibility. And then when Vålerenga came, they came because they knew I'd done a good job. So for me, it felt like a step up, and also the first time that the club come asking without you applying for the job. So that was a no-brainer to go there and to continue my development.
Almost immediately after that, you decided to leave after about 3 years to join the Estonian national setup, which is a really interesting one for me. You spent, I believe, just about a year there. You left later down that line, and the aim was to qualify for the 2000 Euros in Belgium and the Netherlands. That didn't go to plan. It was the 8th year for competitive football, and he failed to qualify. Do you remember the first game in that friendly versus Israel?
Well, everything you said is correct. The coach who offered me the job was the coach who had offered me my first job. He was head coach, Tor Thodesen, Icelandic man. Head coach in Lyn, Oslo at the time when I was hired as a goalkeeper coach the first time. And then he went to Estonia at the same time when I went to Vålerenga. And then we got the chance to be reunited in Estonia when he'd been there for I think almost 4 years. And at that time, the offer was to come as an assistant, not as a goalkeeper coach.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
My debut was a national team trip to the Caucasus. We played against Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. We flew out of. We took the bus from Tallinn to St. Petersburg in Russia, and that was something to come there with Eesti, is the local name of Estonia, on your back, arriving in the airport in Russia, in Moscow. No, in St. Petersburg, because Estonia were one of the states really keen on breaking out when the Union fell apart. So we were not particularly popular in that airport when we came with our independent tracksuits, But we flew out there to Georgia, and then we played national team games with them, and then into Armenia, played with them, and finally into Azerbaijan and played with them. So I got my first trip to Eastern Europe on I think it was 4 or 5 weeks tour, because this was Estonia. No players were professional outside of the country. This was off season. It was in I believe November, December, and we could just bring the whole team. And we brought 2 bags, one with the blue shirts of Estonia and one with the green shirts of Flora, and we could use more or less the same players. I think when Teitur, my colleague, started there, he could select between less than 100 players with an Estonian passport. That was his selection for the national team.
Wow.
And he managed to, they registered in UEFA then at they also got into the FIFA ranking course, probably ranked some 140, 150. And he actually got recognition 1 year from UEFA as the highest climbing nation in the FIFA ranking, because they think they registered at number 68 at the best under him, which was a fantastic achievement for that small country. And you spoke about qualification. Later, some years later down the line, when I came to the Emirates, I worked under Josef Chovanec, Czech Republic coach, who was the head coach of Czech in that qualification to the Euro you mentioned in 2000. and the Czech Republic went through the group stage with 30 points, 10 victories. It was the generation of Koller, Poborski, Nedved, Smicher, Hasek. It was incredible generation. And when I met him, he got me like delivered from the management in the club. This is many years later. He didn't even ask for a new assistant, but they hired me, and I came there and I got introduced to him, and then I said, well, I remember the game in Tallinn with Estonia when Patrick Berger shot and hit the crossbar behind Mark Poom, who was our goalkeeper and later a professional in Derby, played the Premier League with Derby County. And so when he realized that we'd been playing against each other some years earlier, it was a nice icebreaker at that time, because little bit controversial to arrive to be a part of a coaching team when the head coach haven't asked for you.
The goal of this Estonian national team at this time in 1999, it was really weird saying that, in 1999, it was to qualify for the Euros the following year, and you failed to do so. And what was that like in the camp to not make it? I mean, I'm sure the aim wasn't to qualify. I'm sure it was to just give it a good go. But to fail, and, what was that like in the camp?
Well, the way I remember it is that there were no expectations on us. But my head coach at the time, Tor Thodesen, which I mentioned, he's a hard nut, and for him it's not an option to say that we are just here to learn or we want to develop step by step. Or no, he just went out and said, of course, the aim is to qualify, but it wasn't possible with the generation and the players they had at the time, and they haven't been that close. They've been close once, a lot later, but at that time it was not possible, and it wasn't in the years after either. So I don't remember like that it was any big disappointment among the players. They just did their best, and during that period we managed to get players to Holland. We got Mark Poom, as I mentioned, to England, which was fantastic for a country like Estonia. And we got players to Norway through the connections that we, the coaches, had. And we made things happen for Estonian football, but it was not an easy starting point. And Teitur had been there even 4 years before me, so he has some stories from that period, that's for sure.
Well, maybe we'll have to get him onto this show.
You should. You definitely should.
Of course, we can try that 100%. The issue that was facing the team at this time was a 7-0 loss to Israel. I don't know if you remember that game, if you do.
That was before my entry. Mm-hmm. But I remember the result, of course.
Well, it was quite a thrashing. But then you played your home country, Norway, in a 3-3 draw, where you came back from 3 goals down. Could you talk to us about that game?
Well, I wish I could in detail,
Of course.
For some reason, I remember more the game against Sweden, but that was a private game, and I remember I was doing the statistics, and at that time I was doing them as they happened. I had a form that I filled out during the game, and it had a column for corner kicks, for and against, and I remember my form. I had made the form myself, and I've found that I think the average of number of corners for and against is somewhere around 6 or 7. And the form, I brought it from Norway. I used it in Tippeligaen. Never experienced like double digits, And then we came to this Sweden match, and I think they had like 17 corners. My form was I couldn't use it anymore. It was full. But we managed actually to draw against Sweden in a private game where we played 90 minutes on our half. And for us, that was in a way not the way we wanted to to appear, but it was like the only way if we were to not to lose big. We had to play 4-5-1. We had a zonal defense with four guys never seeing the halfway line, the defense, and hard-working midfield, and one guy chasing the attacking half of the pitch more or less alone. That was how we had to approach the games.
After failing to qualify for the Euros, you decided to leave. Was that purely because failing to qualify for the Euros was such a big deal?
No, it was not. We were successful at the same time with the club team, because we had at the same time the same roles in FC Flora. So for me personally, I could not continue. I had issues with getting my salary, and at that time I had some commitments in Norway, which made it really difficult when they couldn't pay me. And the explanation that tomorrow kept on for months. So I had at some point to put my foot down and say that if you cannot pay up what you owe me now, I have no option but to leave. And it was the same answer again and again, that don't worry, it will come. But I decided to leave. And then I get in contact with Brann Bergen. And so I left on my own. And I got in contact with Brann Bergen when I arrived in Norway. And again, fate had it so that Teitur, my boss, had also been with them before. Before he was in Lyn the first time when I met him. He came from Brann Bergen to Lyn at that time it was the beginning of the 90s when we were in Lyn. So he was in Brann from 87 till 89, 90, I think. And I said, I think there is only one club in Norway that could possibly lure him back to Norway, and that's Brann, because he had a fantastic time last time he was here, and the atmosphere and the culture in Bergen is something unique in Norway. So they ended up calling him, and he accepted. And then, of course, I was halfway there. And when my former boss got the head coach job, then we came there as a couple.
Well, we can talk about the 2000 season. You were there for 3 years. In the 2000 season, it was their worst season in 12 campaigns, 12 seasons. You finished third from bottom. A really, really negative season that would have been for you.
No, you're getting the order wrong. This was our third season, 2022. We actually took silver the first year, 2000.
Okay, so
in Brann Bergen.
So the third season in.
Yeah, that what happened in Brann was that we had silver. We were runners up in the first year, and then I think we were number 7 in 2001, our second year, and then we played the promotion relegation playoff in our third year. So it went from second to mid-table to almost relegation.
And how big of a deal would that have been if you got relegated?
It would have been massive in Bergen. So, yeah, it was a really difficult time for the club. They had a big deficit and had to sell players, and we had to replace the players with players on the Bosman ruling or local players. Didn't cost anything. So the budget was reduced from being one of the probably top 3 till second half of the league when it comes to budgets. But also it became more and more difficult for us as coaches, and yeah. It was a tough experience because I was still young, and of course I was the second coach. So, but we came together and we worked together, and I could also feel the pressure that was even a lot tougher on the head coach, of course.
What do you think tipped that all off then to make such positive starts only 3 years ago to then having an awful campaign just a matter of years later?
Well, there is one explanation, and that is what I've already said, that when you don't have money to hire players and you have to sell, the whole team disappeared. We let go of national team players like Torstein Helstad and Raimond Kvisvik, two of the best players at that time, went abroad to Austria, to Austria Vienna, and we more or less dismantled the team. But in Bergen, you would have to know the mentality or the culture to understand. But and again, a little bit about the personality of the head coach. Again, he would say, "Yeah, let's go for it. We'll win it." So he always managed to heighten the expectations, and at that time, especially ahead of the third season, it was crazy to say that we would fight for the title because we didn't have the team for it. But again, there were a lot of other things that I've reflected on later. Had to do with playing style, had to do with our inability to renew and to adapt to the situation. We were we were working out of the assumption that we could compete, and we didn't put enough emphasis on reality, in my mind.
You stayed in Norway, Norhensmund after, and you were the manager at that time. Again, you didn't stay there for too long. It was just under a year. But a big management job, a big opportunity given to you, surely one that you didn't take up in the end. But why did you not take that up? Did you have enough of Brann, or was it just a new challenge for you?
No, the thing is that when Brann went tighter, then he went. After that, we survived on the promotion relegation playoff. So we managed to stay up just by on the last game of the season, and then he went again back to Lyn, to his second stint in Lyn, and at that time we'd been working together for 7 years. So it was the time for me to try something else. And possibly stand on my own feet, because I at that time I wanted to try myself as a head coach. But knowing Brann, I had been there for 3 full seasons. I didn't feel that was the right club to have your debut as a head coach, and I had a running contract as an assistant. So when Teitur went, I just kept on doing my job together with Mons Ivar Mjelde, who was also an assistant player development coach at that time. We kept on coaching the team through the preseason while the club was searching for a new head coach. Even went to Leeds to discuss with a coach called Roy Aitken. He had been coaching the Leeds reserves. And for some reason, somebody in Bergen knew him, and they went over, tried to persuade him to come to Norway. That didn't work out, and the weeks went by, and eventually the players went to the club and asked the club to call off the search for a head coach, because we want the 2 coaches that are operating now. It's working well. We're happy. And then the problem started, because then the management came to me and said, we would like you to take up the position as head coach, joint head coach with Mons Mjelde, a former player, local guy, with a fantastic playing career, a national team player, and also professional abroad. But very little experience as a coach. He hadn't coached a team before at all. And I got the sense that, okay, since I had the highest education at that time, which was the A license, they needed me to get the license for the professional part of the club. And yeah, it didn't sit well with me, and I didn't feel ready for it. So I decided to turn down the offer to become joint head coach, and that's something you don't do easily in Bergen. They were quite eager to tell me their opinion about that. And then I went to the club you mentioned, Nordheimsund, which was an amateur club, and spent 2 years there, promoting to semi-pro level. And from there, that was my first then experience as a head coach, but it was amateur. And then from there, I had my first real, fully professional head coach job with Sandefjord, which is a neighbor city to where I'm born and raised.
Well, 88 matches you managed to coach with that team, Sandefjord. Do you remember your first game as that professional coach? You've now had a load of years of experience as assistants, goalie coaches, and now you stepped up. Now, if anything goes wrong, you're the man that they're pointing the finger at.
Yeah. When I got that job, I think I must have been like the 6th or 8th choice. The position had been vacant for, I think, 6 weeks, which is not normal in football. And when we had the last meeting and we shook hands, I went with the director to his office to sign the contract, and he pushed print on his printer, and it came out with the name of another guy where I was supposed to sign. We made fun of that after, because that was the guy who had been presented the offer before me, which I didn't know, of course, but I knew that they had been talking to a lot of coaches, but I was not the obvious choice at that time. But we found common ground, and I was really, really eager to prove myself and to show what I could do. And they were in the first division, which is then second level, a very young club. At that time when they hired me, I think they were around 10 years old. A club formed on the basis of two older clubs in the city of Sandefjord. But I can't hide it that my memory, like I tried to talk my way out of it by saying that I live in the moment. But I have friends who are really into football, not professional football. They're not working in football, but they're fans and they're into football. And I have a friend who he loves to challenge me and say, "Okay, Tor, what was your first game?" And then I mentioned a game. And then he said, no, that's not your first game. That's your first home game, but you played away the weekend before. Yeah, I remember. And then he said, what was the result? And I say, we drew 1-1. Yeah, correct. You drew, but it was 0-0. And then he leads me on to the first home game, and he tells me, well, who scored the goals? And we won 3-1. I got that right against Ålesund. But when he asked me about the goal scorers, I could only mention 1 out of 3. So that's I'm sorry, I have to say it's a weakness, but I can't even remember. If you ask me about this season in Senegal, I will probably have a problem in telling you game by game. We are now in round 17. We play on Saturday. And I remember round 15 and 16, but don't ask me about round 7 or 8.
Well, I wish you the best in that competition. We'll talk about that in a little while, but let's just carry on with Norsemund or Sandefjord, sorry, where you managed to finish 9th. You also had cup finals.
Yeah, well, my first season we managed to promote to top league.
Mm-hmm.
So 9th was the debut year, my second year, but the debut year in the top league. At that time, we were considered there were, there are odds and
Yes.
predictions ahead of the season. We were placed last everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite successful actually to end mid-table, and also that year we reached Norwegian Cup final. We beat Rosenborg, which was the best Norwegian club team by far at that moment. We beat them in the semi-final in Trondheim, in Lerkendal, at their stadium. So it was probably my most successful year, I would say, in even to date, that 2006, when you consider the situation.
How did you turn that team from predicted to be bottom of the table, which is fair enough considering they're newly promoted, to ninth? A really big turnaround. And Jurgen Klopp said it, we've got to turn doubters into believers. Did you have to go into that dressing room and say, listen, boys, it's going to be hard, but let's just go for it, and maybe we can just pull off the odds?
I have to say that I think my mentality and the way I took on the job was a part of the turnaround, because I was not afraid of anything, and I went in there with a very strong belief on how we should play, and our style was a little bit different than the others. We played 4-4-2 with two straight lines of four. Already at that time was considered a little bit old style. I had my influence from Teitur, my former coach, who had been playing professional in Sweden in the 80s. When Sven-Göran Eriksson was playing that style of football. And IFK Gothenburg won a European Cup playing that style of football. Very direct attacking wise and high pressing and two straight lines, zonal defense. So we went into it with nothing to lose, and I'll even share with you one of the things that I really remember, and it's directly translatable to English, because I was having a meeting with the staff and the people working in the office. It was just a small club, but we had a meeting, a lunch together, I think, after we promoted, and sharing all the optimism and little bit in fear what's going to happen when this team come and this team come. For us it was something that never had happened to the club before, so big expectations and a little bit of fear as well. But I was telling them how I wanted us to attack the whole situation, how to talk about our goals in the media and so on. And one guy was working in the office, and he was just sitting listening. And when he listened to me for 10 minutes, he said, well, to me, it sounds like you're saying that we are not here to survive, we're here to surprise. And it's directly translatable to English because it's the same words in Norwegian. And I said, yeah, exactly. And from that point, that was something that stuck with all of us, that we have nothing to lose, and we are not going into this league saying that we will be really happy if we have two teams behind us so that we can have a shot at the playoffs, to survive. We will not talk about placement in the league. I said it's forbidden to mention any kind of placement in the league. If a journalist asks you, would you be comfortable with the 10th position or the 12th position, don't answer it. Answer with something else, because I didn't want our minds to be locked on that. And I wanted to take advantage of the fact that nobody have any expectations and nobody have any experience with us either. They haven't played with us. And my whole mentality and my mindset is that I don't believe in going into a league when probably most of the teams are better than you player by player, or at least they are paid 3 and 4 times our players. And if we go into there and try to just play as little football as possible, I think a game is too long. You will lose over 90 minutes anyway. So we did the opposite. We were pressing like dogs, pressing really high up the pitch, taking a lot of chances. But also at that time, there were no other high pressing teams in the league. So they really struggled to play against us. And we came in as a surprise. I think by 2/3 of the first half, we were like, I think our best placement was 5th position. And then, of course, the top energy that you can only get when you're promoted for the first time, and you fill up the stadium with people who are full of expectations. The players were running like dogs. But that, you've seen it in all kinds of leagues, that energy, top energy. It's really hard to meet Brentford the first year they're in Premier League in the first round, because they will be crazy. And we were like that, but of course,
I think we've lost Tor. However, what he was trying to say is there's been some huge results at this team, and it hasn't just stopped there. He's continued at loads of other clubs, now in Senegal. And when he comes back, when we manage to get him back, we'll be able to talk about his time in 3 spells with Tonsberg. We'll touch upon Moss, and then we'll go back to Tonsberg, and then loads of other countries spanning across Asia and a few other countries as well. Tor, do we have you back? So to mention to me then the time in Norway just before we move on to the UAE. So you decided to leave Norway, go through a few other clubs, and then make your way into the UAE.
Yes, it was by coincidence again, like it often is in football. In the Emirates, when they need something, they always have the means. They have the financial means to get what they want, and that, of course, that colors also the way they are thinking. And when the management in Banyas in the UAE Gulf League, it's called, I think, the top league. They watched the team and they felt that our team is not physically strong enough. Then what they do is they pick up the phone and they call Real Madrid. And and then the head of the physical department and the medical department in Real Madrid, he told them, well, we don't have any people to that we can lend you, but we recommend that you call a Norwegian professor in physiology, because the guy in Real Madrid, he knew Jan Helgerud of Norway. They've met in different seminars all over Europe for sports medicine. So then Banyas called the Norwegian guy, and he was the same guy that I hired as a fitness coach when I took over Sandefjord. Because I was a young coach at that time, and I reckon that I needed some help with the physical part of the game, and I called a professor in Norway who had written one of the books that we read in our study in the University of Sports. And I didn't know him. I just picked up the phone and called him, and he said, "Congratulations, you're the first football coach to call me. So you must be smart." And then I hired him as a fitness coach, and it was a great part of the success we had with Sandefjord. I told you we were a high pressing team. We used a lot of energy in every game, and we had the stamina to do it because we were really well prepared. And then many years later, when Jan got the offer to come to UAE to test the team, because he had a portable lab to test them in endurance and speed and strength. They asked him, after he tested them, they delivered some quite mediocre results. They said, "Can you please come back in 3 months and do it again?" And then Jan said, "Well, I can, but if you don't change what you are doing, the results will not change. The test results will be exactly the same in 3 months. But I know a coach who knows my methods, and if you bring him here and let him work, then I can come back in 3 months, and your team will have evolved." So that's how Jan actually got me the job in Emirates, because then they called me and asked me if I was ready to come. It was a winter break, halfway through the season. And I just dropped everything I had, including FK Tønsberg in my hometown, and went. And that was also a bit controversial, but I saw it as a great chance, and I couldn't turn it down. So, and we were in preseason in Norway, so I felt that they had the time to find a coach and to get on with the preparation for the upcoming season. So then I ended up as a fitness coach in the coaching team of Josef Šovanic, and he had 6 other coaches from Czech Republic with him there.
We've seen with Ronaldo, we've seen with Benzema, Kante, Fabinho, all these amazing world-class players who've been taken out of European leagues, the Premier League, the big 6 leagues, to go towards Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE. All these nice countries that are now starting to invest a lot more in sport and football to try and make more revenue for their nations. When you were there in 2013-14, did you start to see the influence of football come through, or was there still a bit of less passionate fans and a bit of lack of infrastructure out there?
To be honest, I think UAE, you have to look at them apart from Saudi, or probably all the other Arab nations apart from Saudi, because what's going on in Saudi now is something that is has never happened before. We had something similar in China some years ago, where suddenly all the big stars went there for ridiculous amounts of money. But in UAE, if we return to them, it's been more or less the same. Of course, a little bit more money spent every year, but it's not been like a revolution from one year to another. And they've had the same amount of foreigners allowed per rooster, which is 4. And they've done the same stupid thing every year. They speak about their team always in reference to the quality of those 4 foreigners, which is, in my mind, is stupid, because there are 7 other positions in a team that needs to be filled and needs to be filled with locals. So their emphasis should be on how to develop the Arab player, or the domestic player, and not how to buy the best ex Premier League or ex-Bundesliga striker to score goals for you.
Yeah.
But that's been the mentality in the Emirates for a very long time. But I think what is going on now in Saudi is a little bit different. And it's just my opinion. I don't have any numbers or any facts to back it up, but I'm still on the fence to see if that is sustainable over time, what they are doing now in Saudi. And also the fact that it's the official money going into a number of clubs, but not all clubs, seems to me like crazy.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think we've seen with Saudi Arabia that it's very easy to take players and to lure players to different clubs purely because of money. But as you said, 3,000 fans turn up to arenas full of 60,000 capacity. It's not sustainable, and it probably won't work. However, we're going to skip through a few clubs here, a few clubs from Norway, a few clubs from different countries around the world. But now Tor is in Senegal. He's now in Dakar, currently streaming from there in a Division 2 club, where I believe they got the idea to call it Oslo FA Dakar from people, and because the businessman, the chairman of the club, did business over in Senegal. So we decided to name it after the capital of Norway, and they're currently chasing promotion.
Yeah, I'm actually enjoying it immensely. I couldn't imagine that I would enjoy it as much as I do. The conditions are good. Everything is, of course, comparable, but or relative. But here we have good conditions. We have an okay pitch. We have an okay stadium to play our home games. I have a really good president who is in it for the long term, and he has a long-term vision on what he wants with the club and how the club should be run. It's very well organized, everything, good mentality all over. So a lot of things that I couldn't know anything about has turned out to be just really good. And the thing that really inspires me is that the club was formed in 2012, and the whole object, the whole goal with the club is to develop players for further sell on. And now I'm here to prove that it's possible to do both, to develop a good team and to promote to take the last step and promote to the top league. At the same time, I'm letting players now go, letting my best striker go on trial to Norway as we speak, while we are in the fight for promotion. But this I knew already before I took the job. So now I'm leaving my best striker out for 3 weeks, and we will play at least 3 games while he's away. But this I knew all the time. So when you prepare the team tactically, you always make sure that you split the time between the guy who is your first choice at the moment and the guy who can be already next week. So I try to develop a shadow team at the same time and give chances, use all the substitutes every time, try to develop the next player in every role at every time. And we have an average age sometimes below 19 and always below 20. So I think it's just fantastic. And if we can achieve to promote to the top league with the junior team, I think it's quite an achievement, and I love it. I love the challenge.
I absolutely agree. And currently I'm doing some funding in Kenya where I'm trying to supply an academy in Kenya of 120 boys and girls with football boots to be able to play football. And I'm sure it's very similar in other countries around the world and maybe in Senegal. Do you see the children in Senegal not having the opportunities to play football? I mean, I know you mentioned at the start they're playing in between stones, I believe it was. But do you see these children with amazing technical abilities purely because they've got to play with these small balls in such an intense environment?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. From now on, all the world stars will be produced in academies, like Ødegaard and Holland. Even if they didn't go to a Premier League academy, they are product of a system. It's not coincidental, and they're not grown up in the streets like or even Messi was a product of La Masia. So from now on, for sure, all the world stars will be very heavily influenced by grown-up professionals from a very, very early age. But I love the fact that here I can just walk just outside my house. There is a gravel pitch just 200 meters from here, and I can sit on the fence and watch, and I see so many amazing things. And I even see players playing in I don't know what to call it. In best case, it's a pair of sneakers or even sandals. So and I got a lot of respect for that, because I see it in a daily basis. We bring players who are grown up on gravel to come and play on artificial turf. There is only artificial turf in our league. Some of the pitches are rock hard, so the ball is bouncing, and they develop quite an interesting first touch and quick handling of the ball, because the ball is bouncing a lot compared to what we're used to in Europe.
Tor, it's been just over an hour. We've spoken about your whole career, starting in Norway up to Senegal with Estonia's national team, loads of other things in between. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all the best for the rest of the season.
Thank you. I loved it myself.